All right, all right, all right. Live again. I wanted to go live and check out the DeSantis press conference because I live in Florida. Let's check this out. All right. Let's fast forward here. Wow, they made people wait a long time. I am not going to make you guys wait that long.
In Tampa, thanks everyone for being here. We
Hey,
have
thank you
joining
for
us
having us.
State Senator Blaise Ingoglia from the Tampa Bay region, just north of here. President and CEO of the James Madison Institute, Bob McClure. We have Nathan Shirk as a local
lot
real
of
estate
important
agent,
people.
Tampa resident Kathy Gallo. We also have joining us our great Senator Jay Collins from the Tampa area. So I want to thank you. And we have other dignitaries with us. So thanks everyone for being here. We're here today to discuss an issue that I think is really significant for a lot of Floridians. That's the burden of property taxes, need for property tax relief. This is something I've been talking about for many, many months now after listening to folks and trying to figure out what can we do to make Florida even better. We are currently one of the best states for, if not the best, for state-level taxation. We have no income tax.
Yep, loving that. I've been loving that for my whole life.
And a decent chunk of the revenue that the state generates is not paid by Florida residents. It's paid by snowbirds
And thank you all for paying it.
visitors and tourists. And isn't that the way you want taxation to go? Offload as much of the burden to non-residents as possible so that we can relieve the burden on our residents. I think that makes a lot of sense, and that's the philosophy that we need to continue to do. So we've had that, but you also have at the local level property taxes. And while we do have things like homestead exemption, which helps softens the blow, the reality is we're not even in the top 20 when it comes to property taxes. And we need to change that. We need to make sure that we're giving taxpayers relief when it comes to property taxes.
All right.
Topical, issue. If you come and you're a tourist from Canada and you visit Florida, you can choose to buy what you want and purchase what voluntary, right? So when you're paying the tax, there's a voluntary element to it. Most of the essentials people need.
Yeah, if you don't want to pay it,
and water are
don't
not taxed,
buy things here.
Under Florida sales tax anyway. So you can decide to go on that vacation to Florida knowing that you'll have to pay different taxes for your purchases. When it comes to owning your home, though, for some reason, they don't give you a choice in that. You own your property, you own your house, and yet you got to perpetually pay, pay taxes, which is effectively rent to the government, just to be able to live on your property. If you stop paying the property tax, they could.
Well, see, I love what he's saying here. The libertarian and streak in me is like, yes, all taxation is theft, and property tax is like having me pay rent on my own house. So, okay. I like what he's saying so far.
Take your property. So that's wrong. And philosophically, it's not the way you would want to raise revenue. You would much prefer to do it on consumption, particularly when we have 142 million visitors who come to Florida and are able to contribute to the coffers. That's really what it means to be a low-tax state. Now, we have seen in recent years.
Yeah, if we're gonna allow our parks and our beaches and our theme parks, because we got those too, to be just absolutely destroyed every day and have to clean up after all of that every day, by people who don't live here, then yeah, I want them to pay.
There's a dramatic increase in property values. Now, there's some benefit to that if that's your main source of wealth that you own. That's going to go up. You're going to be wealthier as a result of that. But on the flip side of that is your house gets assessed as more, even though you sell it. It's just an unrealized gain, and you get higher valuations. And even with homestead, it still goes up in terms of what you pay. And especially when people have to move and then they buy a new house, then they're at a much higher cost basis.
That is so weird.
And then that becomes very difficult. So
for some reason, this video is in mono, and all my other video is in stereo. It's creating a weird sound for me. I hope it doesn't for anybody else.
Burden of property taxes is real. We have launched a DOGE effort from the state government that is looking at our agencies, because we do this as a matter of course, but we want to do better, looking at our universities, but also looking at local governments. And so we had a number of local governments who have volunteered to participate in that. Some of the ones that need it the most have been the least likely to want to participate in that. We tried to work with the legislature to get DOGE in law so that we could send teams down to these city and county governments. Because I think what you've seen is, you go back to the last 4 or 5 years, you've seen big growths in these budgets that really outstrips population growth by a long shot. So the question is do they need to be spending that much money? Do they need to be taking money from you in property taxes to fuel increase in budgets? And I think you should know, and you should, as taxpayers, have an ability to evaluate that appropriately. And so we are going to do we're going to continue to work to get the DOGE where it needs to be. We've already done we met with Elon Musk a couple months ago, and we had rejected federal spending under Biden. They didn't know how to take it back, and so we worked with them, and they revoked the authorization. So that was contributing almost $1 billion to the DOGE efforts. Just announced some of the grants and alerted them, and they've taken back some federal grants from universities such as West Florida, which is about social justice, and that's not an appropriate use of tax dollars.
No.
So we've been working really hard to do it. Having said that, most of these budgets, if you just went back to 2019, 2020 levels, you wouldn't miss a lot of this stuff. I mean, you really could get the job done. So we want to be able to show that, because some people say, oh, well, we want property tax relief, but, quote, it just can't be done. Yeah, it can be. Okay, Florida's proven we can get big things done. And so you can do
All
it.
right.
It's something that I think is really, really important.
You
now,
can do it.
We have provided, since I've been governor, record amount of tax relief for Florida residents, including in this recent year, we've eliminated, a couple years ago, we fully eliminated sales tax on all baby items. So diapers, wipes, all these things, that's not taxable in Florida anymore. It used to be taxable. We got that off the books. We've done disaster preparedness tax holidays, done back to school tax holidays. We're proposing for this summer to do a marine fuel tax holiday so that you can fuel up your boats without having to pay a tax on the fuel, as well as a Second Amendment summer so that you can buy what you need for Second Amendment activities without tax. There's a whole bunch
Hold
of
on, y'all. I got
the fire.
I gotta take a second here. All right, folks. That was I had to take a break to talk to my son. He has his own YouTube channel, and the folks on his Discord have just created for him a bunch of new emojis featuring turtles because that's his thing. So, all right, let's get back to the news conference and see what else Governor DeSantis has to say.
Billions of dollars tax relief, and I think people appreciate it. It's kind of like every little bit helps. We've done. We did a toll relief for commuters, $500 million each of the last 2 years total, $1 billion total. People appreciate that. They get a 50% rebate on their tolls and only applied to Florida residents. And so
Yep,
if you had a
I got that.
from out of state,
That was
it didn't
so
apply.
cool. I
We've
loved
done the
that.
Freedom Summer, where you can go and get no tax on outdoor activities. So we even did a gas tax holiday when gas really spiked under Biden. And we're proud of that, and we want to make sure that we're continuing to stand with taxpayers. Here's the thing,
Thank you.
I called for
Thank you for
property
standing
tax
with the
relief.
people who actually live here and pay all of your all salaries. You know, I know it is kind of a huge thing because nobody else has ever done it, but it really should be the expectation that our politicians are going to stand with us and do things that make our lives easier in tough times.
This obviously is local. We know that, but there is part of it that state mandates for it's called required local effort for education. I've proposed we have the money to fund the education budget and send you a rebate on your property taxes this year. People could get, and we'd only do it for homesteaded Floridians, do it for the snowbirds, but you could get a rebate on property tax between $300 and $1,000 depending on the way the package would go. Isn't it something that would be beneficial? Build to a property tax relief on the ballot in 2026, which is how you have to do it, do a constitutional amendment to provide protections for homeowners. So this is all very doable. Now, there's folks in the Florida House of Representatives, if you followed how this has gone in the legislative session, when I propose something, the leadership there, they just reflexively oppose it. That's their view. Now, they didn't run on that. They ran on our agenda, and they seized power because of us. They wouldn't have a supermajority if it wasn't for us. And yet they're there just trying to stop, good progress. So go back to January. Before President Trump took office, I called a special session of the legislature because we needed to increase our cooperation and authorities to assist the federal government with President Trump's immigration enforcement agenda. Very popular with the voters that sent us there, was a big part of the president's mandate. Obviously, there's not enough federal authorities in terms of ICE agents to get the job done without state and local cooperating. And so we said, in Florida, all state and local must cooperate. We're not a sanctuary state, and we want to make sure that they're on board. We also want to make sure that we have appropriate legal authorities to hold criminal aliens so that we don't do catch and release. We also want to make it a crime to illegally enter Florida. And, we had a liberal judge, but that always happens. We'll work that through. So we wanted a really robust package, and the leadership in the Florida House rejected doing that. They said it was premature. They said it wasn't necessary and all this stuff. They attacked me. And what happened was, and the people had a really negative reaction to that. People were like, do your job. You need to be on board with the president. You need to be on board with the governor. And they weren't willing to do that. And
we
so
get rid of
they
them?
got a lot of blowback. So then finally they had to come to the table. But they tried to jam through a bill to make Florida a de facto sanctuary state. So rejecting my call to have state and local cooperate, rejecting my call to end catch and release, rejecting really, and it's not even me, like I'm doing what people who are smart in this area know needs to be done and what the people wanted to see happen.
Yeah.
And so they tried to do that.
That's
and
what
that
we
blew up in
voted
their
for.
face. And so finally, they had to be brought kicking and screaming to do the legislation we have. And now what's happening? Florida's leading the nation on state level immigration enforcement. And we are the bright spot working with the Trump administration to get the job done. We just had Operation Tidal Wave, rounded up 1,300 illegal aliens. Many of them either had criminal charges or had already been ordered to be deported. Because, you hear due process. And first of all, you come illegally, you're not entitled to an O.J. Simpson trial before you're deported.
Why has it got to be an O.J. Simpson trial?
It's basically just enforcing state sovereignty. And obviously, you want to make sure that you don't have a right to be here. I mean, so there should be some check on that for sure. But the idea that this should be dragged out is ridiculous. Having said that, once they've already gone through this process and have been ordered to be removed, why are we having any discussion at that point? Of course you want to do it. But they were opposed to that. Reason why, look, I think that they are more, the leadership in the House was probably more sympathetic with more of the open borders, but part of it was they didn't want me to get a, quote, win. That's how these people think. They're not trying to do your business. They're pursuing their own personal agenda. They have vendettas. They have these things. And so that was a really telltale sign. That is not the way you should be operating. You should be doing this was something that had major support, and obviously it's been very effective. So that's kind of the backdrop on all this stuff. And so they don't want property tax relief. And how do you know that? Well, they rejected my calls to do it during the regular session. But then the House leadership convened on the last day of session a hearing on a task force for property tax with 37 members, including some of the most liberal Democrats who do not want to give you property tax relief in the entire state of Florida. You don't convene a 37-person committee if you're trying to get something done. You convene a 37-person committee if you're trying to smother it in the crib.
Yeah.
They're trying to kill any chance of property tax relief by doing this committee.
Oh, is that what's up?
If you were so committed to this, why would you wait till the last day of the legislative session to do it? Obviously, this is a political ploy. It is not something real. So you have that. But then what are they trying to do? Well, because we want to do property tax, they've come up with an idea that I don't think I've heard a single voter endorse as being something that would be good. Their idea, instead of giving you property tax relief, they want to do an across-the-board 1/4 of 1 penny reduction in the state sales tax. Now, what would that mean for you? The average Floridian would save a whopping $47 if they were to do it. But what would it also do? It would relieve the burden on Canadian tourists, visitors. We had 142 million visitors. I want them to pay more and you as Floridians to pay less.
Yes, that makes sense.
Why are we proposing
Let's do that.
A tax break for non-Florida residents, for foreigners?
No, I only want tax breaks for people who live here.
No, it's good that they're contributing. Your roads get built because the visitors and the non-Floridians.
Yeah, if you want to come to
contribute.
Florida, you got to pay.
And so why would you do it? You literally won't even notice.
What's wrong with that?
That you have the lower, because it's 1/4 of a penny. And most of the staples that you do aren't subject to the sales tax anyways.
I'm getting a haircut
So it isn't
today,
like
y'all.
Families that are struggling at the grocery store, and groceries are expensive, that they're going to see some type of benefit because they're not. So it's so small. But what it does do, because we're fortunate to have a lot of revenue coming into the state from non-residents, because it's geared to benefit non-residents, it would be over 10 years between $16 and $20 billion fiscal loss for the state. Now, first of all, I think that we've paid down debt, we've run big surpluses, we've done tax cuts, we've done key things, key infrastructure.
I mean, yeah, could we absorb that?
We have a great formula.
We could.
We've retired,
But do we want to?
41% of the state's
No.
debt for the whole history of Florida just since I've been governor. We did an accelerated debt repayment program where we're retiring it early, and we've saved the taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars in interest costs.
All
So
right.
we've got a great formula. But why would they be doing it? They're doing it because this would basically kill any chance of doing property tax relief, folks. Because what are they going to say next year? Oh, well, we don't have the money to do property tax relief because, this is mostly money going to locals. But if you do a major reform, there's going to be a transition period. They need the state to take some of our surplus and help some of the local communities, like rural communities, as they transition their tax base away from taxing their own people. So the purpose of what they're proposing is to stop us from getting any type of property tax relief.
That is going to be a kind of a difficult transition. I mean, like, how do you get these tourist tax dollars to Polk County? Right? I mean, property tax is kind of the way that they stay afloat in those places, isn't it?
Is there anyone here that would prefer 1/4 of 1 penny relief to property tax relief? Or
No.
do you want property tax relief?
I want property
I don't even
tax
think
relief.
It's a question. And so I've never seen anything be proposed that has so little buy-in. People are not clamoring to give Canadian tourists a tax break.
No.
So we need to have a Florida first tax policy here. And that means standing up for our own people, standing up for the tourists and the foreigners.
Heck yeah.
And I look forward to working with the Senate and relevant House members to have a good Florida first tax package. I can tell you, any Florida last tax package is going to be dead on arrival. We are not going to kneecap our ability to provide you property tax relief just so we can give a little bit of a benefit to Canadian tourists. That is not going to happen. So you take that to the bank. Now, what do we need to do going forward? Obviously, $47 tax cut is not going to go very far. You won't even notice it because you don't even get that in one. It'd be one thing if you at least got that. You get like 4 cents here, 20 cents here. I mean, it's insane. We need to make sure that we're delivering property tax relief. I propose to do relief this year, then parlay that into a ballot initiative that would allow Floridians to be able to own their home without having to pay rent to the government. I mean, wouldn't that be great if we can get to that point?
That would be
The only way
great.
we're going to get to that point is if we continue
That would
the
be
successful
awesome.
model that Florida's had, doing some of these tangents that's going to kneecap our ability to do that. Not the right way to go forward as a state. So we want Florida first policies. We want Florida first tax relief. We want to focus our tax reduction efforts on what will make the biggest impact for Florida families.
This guy over on the other side, you guys can't see him. Hold on, let me. This guy over here on the side, right over there. Let's see. Yeah, this guy. He keeps making these like freaked out faces. Hold on. Let me back this up a few seconds here. You gotta see this.
That own their home without having to pay rent to the government. I mean, wouldn't that be great if we can get to that point? But the only way you're going to get to that point is if we continue the successful model that Florida's had. Doing some of these tangents that's going to kneecap our ability to do
Looks
that
like he's
is
about
not
to
the
shit
right
himself
way
or
to
something.
go forward as a state. So we want Florida first policies. We want Florida first tax relief. We want to focus our tax reduction efforts
Is it like hot in
on
there?
what
Why
will
is
make
this
the
guy so
biggest
sweaty?
impact for Florida families, for our senior citizens, for people that are working hard and trying to make ends
All
meet.
right,
And that
could
is
focus
what
back on
we are going to do.
the
I don't
governor.
want to be 21st in property tax. I want to be at the top. We're the top. We just announced U.S. News. Economy, #1 in America, 2 years in a row. Higher
Awesome!
education, #1. Overall ranking, we were 13 when I became governor. They now have us at 6 for all these other things. And some of the things they ranked, we deliberately tried to go in a different direction, and I think to the benefit of the state. So we got to build off that. But I want to be top for property tax. I want to be a friend to the taxpayer here in the state of
Oh,
Florida.
well, thank you.
Let's make sure we have such a unique opportunity. We had $142 million last year. We have a unique opportunity amongst all the states to have non-residents shoulder the tax burden and for us to bring relief to our Florida residents. That's what's got to be focused. This proposal I've seen floated by the House leadership would do the opposite of that.
All right. So DeSantis wants to give us all, well, not all, but all the folks in Florida, tax break on property taxes, and the legislature is not on board yet. Anybody in Florida who watches this might want to find out who their state legislators are and call them up, send them an email, something, tell them you want tax breaks for Floridians and only Floridians. All right, y'all. I'm going to end the stream here. You guys have a good day.